on sidewalks. Never go to a stranger's house. And never go out alone.
Welcome to the SaWGuy podcast. As always, y'all know I'm the SaWGuy. And yeah, you're joining me for episode 32 on this cult favorite for Halloween, Trick or Treat. You know what's crazy though? I really do enjoy this film. And as a lot of other horror fans do, don't get me wrong, what's oddly strange about this film, not only is it super fucking great, but it's just, it never got a full theater release. And I'm just blown the fuck away about this. For whatever reason, I mean, there's, various different speculative rumors on why it didn't get released. Some of it had to do with the creator. He did Superman Returns, and I'm a DC guy, I won't lie. But I know even then, that film, Superman Returns, it was just awful. And Warner Brothers, they had signed on the director and the creator, Michael Dougherty. They signed him on, and they basically said, okay, we'll have you do like 2 or 3 pictures or whatever. Obviously, one of them ended up being Superman Returns, which was a total box office failure, to their standards. Not to knock on any Superman fans out there. I'm a DC guy, but I prefer Batman. But, after that film, he had the other film to do, which was Trick or Treat. And boy, was that a really good treat that we got. As always, like I do in every one of my episodes, I'm going to go through and break it down for you, throw in a little bit of tidbits in there, see what you guys think. And as always, drop me a comment below to let me know what you guys think. If you guys like this episode, if you, want me to do something different for Halloween. I mean, I'm in the Halloween fucking spirit. As soon as October fucking first hit, I was just like, oh man, dude, this is this is a classic. I got to do this one. I didn't want to do Halloween because I know that's the in thing to do, with everybody, and I don't do that. Nope. So without further ado, let's get started with this episode, right? So, Trick or Treat. What is it about? When did it came out? Give me the facts, Mr. SaWGuy, right? So this film, I believe it was filmed late 2006, early 2007. And it was originally scheduled to release with Saw 4 in 2007. But here again with the other rumor, they were saying that, okay, this film never got a full release because, what happened with Superman Returns. The other rumor was, if you lived it like I did, I'm a big Saw fan. Saw 2 had just came out and it blew up the charts. Saw 3 even made a bigger dent in the horror community. Saw 3 was so big that at that time, Labor Day weekend, you had the Halloween remake come out from Rob Zombie. And that was like the biggest Labor Day film until the new It remake had came out. And even then, Saw 4, with that being announced, they just said, you know what, fuck it, we're not even going to compete. And that's what they did. They basically said, okay, we don't want to compete with Saw 4 because we know it's already going to be a good film. People are going to go see it. So it never got a release because of that, Well, I can't say because of that. There was a bunch of other features with it. But anyways, it was filmed around that time frame. And the whole story takes place in a little Ohio town called Warren Valley. I was going to say West Valley. I don't know. For some reason, I was thinking of freaking Back to the Future. I don't know why. But anyways, the story was actually really cool because it's brought up as an anthology. And whenever I think of anthology, I always think of like the Quentin Tarantino style, So you got one scene going on here, this other scene's going on, and you have a lot of like back and forth, right? And then it collides into one big ass story, little by little, and it just mind blows you, right? That's what this whole film is about. But the best thing about this is they did it on Halloween. How many films have you seen that are exactly, all about Halloween? I mean, besides, obviously Halloween with Michael Myers, you don't see too many of them. Well, at least in the golden age, early 90s, they used to do a lot of them, but that fad just kind of died down. You see a billion of them, obviously, with freaking Christmas and all these other holidays, but with Halloween, it grabbed people's attention, right? So the whole story follows, a group of 5 people, or 5 groups, I should say. And the movie starts off with a husband and wife. They're coming home. Their house is all decorated for Halloween and shit. They're tired. It looked like they did matching costumes, and this guy and this girl, well, I should say woman, they look like they were a married couple, right? And so she's like, fuck it, I'm tired, let's get this shit down. The guy's like, no, let's go in, and I'm drunk, let's foreplay. That shit was kind of funny because, us guys could relate. I mean, it's, Halloween, right? But anyways, the whole story goes is that she's giving him shit because she wants to take everything down. He's like, no, and she goes, well, my mom is coming, and she's gonna trip, and, he throws that guy fit like, oh, okay. And then she tells him, okay, well, go get the tape ready. He gets excited, goes in the room, and this is what I thought was fucked up. He's married to this chick, and he's making her clean up the shit outside. All these Halloween decorations, like, what the fuck, dude, right? But anyways, I laugh at it because at the time, DVD was the hot thing, you didn't have Blu-ray. DVD was like still the top dog of everything. So this guy pulls out this VHS. It says nature video. He pops it in. It ends up being, a pornography film. You don't expect it. And for me, I just kind of laughed like, what the fuck is this, right? Where's this going? She's taking down all these sheets because they did like the hanging crosses to look like scarecrows, and they put like sheets on them and shit to kind of look like ghosts. So she pulls them all down, and it builds up the suspense music. And all of a sudden, she pulls off one, and this little fucking creature just jumps on her. And they're wrestling down and shit. And then, the husband, he doesn't hear anything because he's, kind of blacking out a little bit. He hears a loud noise, and then it shows. Then they play it to the movie where it's like the chick screaming and shit. And so he gets that mixed up with his wife and shit. So all of a sudden they're struggling. This woman, this little creature. They go into the street and they see these kids trick-or-treating, right? And all of a sudden you see he pulls out this lollipop and slits her neck. The blood splatters all over in these sheets. The kids, they just turn around and fucking walk off. And then after that that's where it ended the scene, right? The husband finally wakes up. He wakes his lazy ass up, goes out there and says, okay, well, looking all around, like, where the fuck is she? He goes and then he pulls all the sheets down. He pulls this one sheet down that's still lit up. It ends up being his wife, who's dead, like, nailed onto the cross, and she has the fucking lollipop in her mouth, and it's like, sticking out. It's like, whoa, what the fuck? This is all this happens in 5 minutes. Automatically, you could tell by my enthusiasm, I'm fucking hooked. I'm psyched on this shit, right? So anyways, after that, it starts showing how people are celebrating Halloween, how they all do it, and how they do this big-ass parade. And I imagine in other states, they probably do it that big, especially Ohio. I've heard, I know a couple people that live out there, and they say they do it fucking huge. I'm a Cali boy. I'm from California. Small towns where I live in, they do it, but not as big as that. I wish they would. That'd be pretty cool, Big towns, like Los Angeles, they do big shit like that, but not in small towns. But anyways, it shows like, everything going on. You see all the people, and it's these people that they're going to focus on because they're like following them, and then all of a sudden, that's what it does, right? So it follows this big heavyset kid. His name was Charlie. And he's going around, he sees all these pumpkins on top of the white picket fences, and he's being a fucking dick, This kid, I guess he's a bully, smashing pumpkins and shit. He's stealing candy. He goes up to this one house, and it shows like this little pumpkin, and it says, hey, we're not home, please take one. Well, we all know from, my childhood, that whenever you see a sign that says, please take one, who the hell really takes one, right? Now, I wasn't one of those kids that took that shit, but I knew, kids that you would see, like, trick-or-treat with you and stuff. They would go and they take the whole fucking thing and dump it, right? So this kid's trying to do that, and he gets stopped by this, they imply that he was a principal, but it was played by, Dylan Baker. He's the guy who did, Dr. Connors on the Spider-Man series. He was in a bunch of other stuff, but he was still kind of, well-known, not known yet, and he played the principal, so he comes up and he tells the big kid, he goes, oh, that can't be good for your diabetes there, Charlie. And, the kid's like, well, I'm just, and he called him on it, which was funny. Hey, save that life for another day, And then he goes, besides, sit here, And he's like, well, I gotta go. No, you're gonna sit. So he's talking to the kid sitting down, right? He sits down, he pulls out this dull knife, and he's like, "Oh, don't worry, it's not for you. My knives are all dull." So he starts carving this pumpkin and shit. And then he gives the kid a candy. And the kid eats the candy, then he starts like getting sick, right? And the principal, it implies that he's a weirdo in some way. And he was like, "Make sure you always don't forget to check your..." Then this kid, Charlie, he fucking barfs up chocolate, fucking all over. Now, the movie, to me, after I seen this so many times, I always implied maybe it was his diabetes. But you find out later on that it was actually the guy, Stephen Wilkins, you know, the principal, he actually fucking poisoned the candy, you know? And here's this kid, he's throwing up, then he passes out on him and barfs all over on him, right? The principal's just sitting there, pulls out a lollipop, right? He opens his door, tries to drag this kid, and this kid is huge, you know? He's, you know, a big boy, right? And all of a sudden, he's still coughing up, you know, blood and chocolate and shit. And he's like, ugh. That shit was funny. Then all of a sudden, he closes the door. These kids come up and they start knocking on the door. He turns off his light. We all had this happen. You know, we go trick-or-treating and you knock on the door. And these kids, they're being little punk asses. They're like, "Hey, we know you're in there. Give us some candy." So they keep pounding. Then you hear the Stephen Wilkins. He's like, "All right, hold on. Opens the door, has all the blood and shit on him. Kids are screaming, "No, no, no." You know, they were fucking with him. And then basically he gave them candy. They asked for his jack-o'-lantern. He's like, "Why, you gonna smash it?" "No, it's for a good cause." Okay, you know. You find out later on what the pumpkin was for, right? And then you see this little monster creature looking thing, right? He's like, "Hey, didn't you get one?" You know? He grabs freaking like 3 candies, goes. He's dragging the bag, you know, his burlap sack and shit. You can hear he has a cat in there. Meow. To me, that fucking shit was funny. But anyways, later on to the story, he goes in the backyard, and it implies that he's already a killer. He already had this planned out. So he already had the hole buried. He throws the kid in there. He tries to bury everything. And then, you know, all of a sudden his son comes out, and he goes, "Dad!" You know, he's on top of the window. "Hey, when are we going to carve the pumpkin?" And he's telling his son, "Be quiet. Put your inside voice on." And then he's all telling him, "No, when are we going to carve it?" "In a little bit. Watch Charlie Brown." This kid shouts out, "Charlie Brown's an asshole. Billy Wilkins. Language." You know, and for me, it's fucking funny. And I'll get to this point in a second, too. As he's doing all that, it's getting loud. The neighbor's dog is going crazy. So he breaks off a finger from the victim, throws it to the dog. The dog eats it. His neighbor's going crazy. And he's like, "Hey, I got an NRA membership in my pocket. Don't make me have to use it." You know, he goes in there. "What the hell you doing in there? Burying bodies?" You know, kind of joking with him. And basically he was, you know, telling him, "Hey, well, I'm fixing my septic tank. You know, shit happens." And basically, you know, he just, you know, blows him off. And then the neighbor's like, "All right, whatever. Keep your freaking kid out of my yard." And he's like, "The fuck you talking about?" You know, and you find out later on in the story, right? So as he's trying to bury, you know, the big kid, Charlie, he wakes up. So he beats the shit out of him. After that, you know, he plants a tree and pours the water on it. Well, the motto is, now, I'm not a serial killer or anything. I went to school for medical. The motto is you know, put a plant down or something over a fresh corpse, and supposedly it's supposed to, you know, nourish this tree or whatever, right? That's the myth. I never done it, so I can't tell you if it's true or not, but that's why he did it. And anyways, after doing all that work, he goes in, his son scares the shit out of him, and it implies that Stephen Wilkins is irritated with his kid. So, he tells his kid, "Okay, let's go carve, you know, our pumpkin." Grabs a knife, puts it on his back, and then they imply that they go downstairs. He grabs his kid's head, and then he's like, "Let's carve a scary face, Dad." "Yes, we will." And it implies that he killed his kid. Or you thought, right? So, basically, what it was is that when they start carving, it was actually the big kid, Charlie, who was the bully, might have been his son's bully. They cut off his head, and then they're carving him, right? I laugh because at the notion here, he's yelling at his kid, telling him, "Hey, language, don't call Charlie Brown an asshole, or don't say that word." But yet he wants his own son to follow his own pathways of being the psycho killer. Ah, right? Yeah, I'm on to something there. So that story takes place, right? Then you follow a bunch of chicks who are from out of town. They're going in, they're talking about, you know, their crazy wild stories of hooking up with a dude and chick and shit. They're, at the Halloween store, dressing up in costumes. And then finally, the last person to come out is Anna Paquin. She plays Lori, which is one of the other main characters of the whole story arc. And they're all dressed up in something different. She's the Little Red Riding Hood. Then you have Bo Peep. Then you have Snow White. They're all mythical chicks. Well, mythical chicks. Mythical characters, right? And they're basically trying to hook up with these dudes. And it's implying that they're going to go out, have a good time. I don't want to imply the fact that they're promiscuous. But the movie played off on that. And you find out later why, right? And they kept talking about, oh, well, she's a virgin. And, they're making fun of Anna Paquin. You never done it, So it implied a lot on that, right? And they basically all get their dates, and they go and meet out in the forest. And then she's like, okay, well, I'll catch up to you. And then it fast forwards into these 3 little kids that knocked on Stephen Wilkins' door and got the pumpkin. They basically were, collecting all these pumpkins for a reason. They go and they meet up with this, I wouldn't say special needs girl. I would say she's very different. And, what's crazy about this, I try not to laugh, but when they go up to meet this girl, her name is Rhonda. What's crazy is that, I guess, kids are fucked up, plain in general. When they go and see Rhonda, they're all like, oh, is that Rhonda the retard? And, I'm not going to laugh because, I've been the oddball my whole life. I know what it's like, but I thought it's fucked up. But I like the aspect that it played that kids are fucked up because, man, in this day and age, kids are mean little jerks sometimes, because they say everything honest. And they are very unfiltered, I should say. But anyways, they meet up with this girl, Rhonda, and, one of the cuter boys, one of the better looking boys, because it was a boy. You had the main girl, Macy. You had another little boy, his name, I can't remember his name, but he was dressed up as a pirate. And then, then you had the nicer looking one, right? They basically used him so he can use his looks to kind of flirt with Rhonda and say, hey, hey, I like your costume. Did you make it yourself? Yeah, And then it follows their story about how they collect all 8 jack-o'-lanterns. And they go out to this quarry, right? And as they finally go to this quarry, they tell the story about what happened here, And the whole story is that these families, they would have these kids that were their dirty little secrets. They implied that they're, children that they had from like fooling around with somebody else's wife kind of thing. They were their dirty secrets. Well, one day in Halloween, all the parents got together and paid this bus driver that takes them home and says, hey, we'll give you an offer you can't refuse. We're going to pay you, handle the business, right? So the bus driver drives off to a quarry on Halloween with all these kids, make sure that they're all chained up and everything, gives them candy. And only one kid who was in the vampire mask knew what was going on. He's like, wrong way, wrong way. I want to go home. I want to go home. And he didn't pay attention to that aspect, And I thought most people would be sad at this. It pissed me off on this. This is the part of the film that, like, what the fuck? It's just, it really got to me on that because, I don't know how I would feel about that, but honestly, I just, it affected me. Like, it angered me, And very few films do that. And that's what I liked about this, And it played off the whole story that he was paid to take care of business and get rid of these kids. And while that had happened, he thought all the kids were chained up. The kid in vampire mask, he gets in the front seat of the car, starts it up, drives off the quarry. The quarry goes down into, the lake and the water and everything. And the bus driver somehow survived. And they said that no one's ever seen him, right? So back to the kids and Macy. They basically said, okay, so there was 8 kids that died. And then you have 8 jack-o'-lanterns for each soul to lay to rest. They go on this little, elevator looking thing. And they basically go down first, and they said, okay, we can only hold 3 of us safely. So they all go down, and they put the pumpkins out. Rhonda and the other pirate kid, they get in there, carrying the rest of the pumpkins and shit, going down. And they start hearing these, screams, like, hey, no, something's wrong, ah! So Rhonda tells the kid, hey, if you're scared, hold on to the pumpkin, it will save you, because of the light. She goes out there and see, and then these creatures, they come after her. And she's freaking out. She falls, hits her head, wakes up, and she's still freaking out. It ends up being the whole time these little asshole kids they were playing a joke on Rhonda just because she was different, you know, and she got hurt over it. And, you know, the guy who they used to kind of pawn her in, he actually had a change of heart and guilty conscience. And he was basically like, all right, this is fucked up. We already scared her. It's Halloween's over. Pack up the stuff. Let's go. Right? So out of all the pumpkins, they only had one that was still lit. And after that, then, you know, they went to go kick down that pumpkin. And then all of a sudden, the actual kids, like, came out of their watery grave and went after them. Rhonda kind of knew. So she locks herself in this elevator cage, you know, to go back up. And, you know, here are these ghosts. They're chasing after all these other kids. And then they're like, help us, help us. It's not a joke this time. Please help us. And as she goes to open the door, she lifts the elevator. And as she's going up, you know, her attitude changes completely. And then basically you hear all the kids like, ah, like they're being gutted up and shit, you know. As she's walking by with, you know, the wagon that's carrying the one lit pumpkin, she sees Sam. He's the little kid with the burlap sack and everything. They cross paths, and that's all they do. No story arc there. They just show that they cross paths and that they're all connected, right? Then it goes back to, you see this guy in this, you know, masquerade mask, and he's following this chick. He's making out with her. She's drunk and everything. And then he starts biting her, and then she starts freaking out because she's bleeding. And then she goes to ask the people in the beginning, you know, the chick who gets killed with the lollipop in the mouth, hey, help me, I need help. Then the husband tells her, oh, she's just drunk, you know, she's just with those guys. And it shows that there's a group of people that are all covered in blood and shit for Halloween. Because there's a big-ass parade going on in this, right? So this masked guy, he basically pulls her in, kills her, and makes her look like she's passed out drunk. And then he starts seeing Anna Paquin. And so he starts kind of chasing her. Kind of like, you know, the actual Red Riding Hood theme. Where he's like the big bad wolf and chasing after her, right? And as that's going on, then you kind of figure out what's happening. You know, she's getting a call from her sister and saying like, hey, where you at? I got a boy over here who wants to hook up with you. Ends up being this big dude in the baby outfit. You know, she's just being dumb. And so you still really don't know what's going on. And then she starts walking down a hallway. Well, not the hallway, like down the road, right? And all of a sudden she turns around because she can hear this guy. You know, it's been a long day. Just come on out now. He comes out and grabs her. And then he basically, you know, tells her like the big bad wolf. My, what big eyes you have. Bites her. And then all of a sudden, it goes into the scene where they're at the, you know, the party with the fire and everything going off. And you see this red cape just drop down. And you think that it's Anna Paquin, right? You know, her character, Lori. They go and they see who it is. And it's the masked guy in the masquerade, right? And then they're all like, you okay? Because she comes up right behind. She's like, yeah, I tried to play hard to get, and then he bit me, so I'm here. Well, you sure you're going to be okay? Yeah, I'll be okay. Then, you know, one of the most iconic scenes out of this film is that, you know, it starts playing Sweet Dreams from Marilyn Manson. And then you see how they start turning into fucking werewolves. Like, what the fuck? Like, right out of the left field, everything makes sense. How, you know, he was her first, she's a virgin, and it's because she was still, you know, a wolf in transformation, and she hadn't done her first kill. And it was like, holy shit, this is really cool, you know? So they're all transforming and everything into wolves, ripping off their skin and shit, and then they fully transform. It was really epic how they did it. It was one of the best scenes, I think, out of the film. And they remove the mask and the teeth, the fake, because it was actually fake teeth. It wasn't a vampire. And it ends up being fucking Stephen Wilkins. It was the principal of all things. So everything all was tied into one big ass story. And so Anna Paquin, she gets on top of him and she says the same thing. What big eyes you have. Transforms to a werewolf and just destroys him, annihilates him, right? Well, that's all going on. Then all of a sudden, the movie goes backwards a little bit and tells you what happened with the neighbor, why he was such a dick, right? So the neighbor, he never had any of these kids come to his door. He was one of the crazy old men that you don't go to his house and trick or treat because he always had his lights off and shit. And it shows he's burning up files and shit. Pictures, all this stuff, right? He's watching TV of the wrong coast. Set it and forget it. I know that infomercial very much. I'm usually a late night kind of guy. And that shit's funny. I've seen that infomercial so many fucking times I could quote the whole thing for you. But anyways, he's sitting there watching TV. These kids, they go and they trick or treat at his door, and he seeks his dog on him. And it's funny, his dog is wearing his own costume, and he has a voice, changer to make him sound like he's this big green monster and shit. And all of a sudden he starts hearing his gate open and creaking. And all of a sudden they start throwing eggs. And he starts getting pissed off because his dog goes out through the dog door. Goes outside, and then it actually shows the scene where he starts talking to Stephen Wilkins as he's burying Charlie. Which, coincidentally, the whole story, again, takes place all in one big loop, right? And after that, after he tells him, hey, keep your freaky kid out of here, And Stephen Wilkins was like, what? And explained that it was Sam that threw the egg at the window, not his son, right? He goes back in the house, he starts hearing these noises. Turns on his light, and it just blows out, and then he sees Sam run across. And then he goes up to the room, and all of a sudden this fucking jack-o'-lantern lights on fire. Woof! Right? And he starts seeing, like, all these writings all over the wall and shit that say, like, trick or treat, smell my feet, give me something good to eat. And then Sam comes out and attacks him, this little fucking creature. And then he finally gets the gun, he shoots him, and then Sam, he pulls out a candy bar, which I thought was badass. Pulls out a candy bar and it has a heavy-duty blade, and he cuts the guy's, Achilles tendon. And, it's a good back-and-forth scene, where they're fighting, they slow down, it kind of remind me of They Live a little bit, the fight scene. And anyways, the big climax of this scene is where, he falls down the stairs, Sam pours all of his candy out of his bag, and it's all fucking, like, Skittles, M&M's, all this, crazy candy looking, similar candy to those, right? And in between, there's like broken glass, there's razors, so he's getting cut up, right? Finally, he lays down in the corner, and then he knows that Sam, he pulls out this lollipop, bites it, and it's got this, little bit of point, sharp edge to it. He goes to stab him, and instead of stabbing him, he hits him right here, and it ends up being a candy bar. He pulls up the candy bar, eats it, and, just like Sam did, I guess, he just wanted to get the guy in the spirit of Halloween. And so he eats it, opens the door and walks out. That's all it was. But they did show him en masse without the burlap sack, which was pretty cool. He looked like a pumpkin, and his hand moved on its own, had its own life and everything. They never explained the character of Sam, which I thought was really cool. And then you find out that who the old crazy guy was. After Sam had left, you see that one of the pictures he was burning, you find out that it's 8 kids from the school bus, and he was the fucking bus driver. What? Right? Aren't you mind blown at this shit? I was mind blown, like, whoa! And then it shows, like, moments later, he's all, like, decked out and everything, because he's all an old man, and he's hurt, and he's like this, giving kids candy and shit from his sling. And then one of the girls is like, hey, great mummy costume, Mr. Keurig. And I started laughing. I was like, oh, man. Then he sees that Sam's across the street, and they just have a good stare down, like at the end of the street with each other. Then all of a sudden, that's when you see the husband and wife come in. She blows out the pumpkin and they're bickering, and then she starts cleaning up the shit. That's when Sam turns around, and Sam was the one that killed her. And as that was going to happen, the old man, he's like, all right, whatever, I'm done with Halloween. Turns around, closes the door, and then he comes back because he hears a knock. And then he gets his candy ready. He looks down, looks up, and it ends up being all the kids that he had drowned from the bus accident. And it was the main one with the vampire mask that tells him, trick or treat. And they don't show it, but they show like comic strips and animation strips of them like ganging up and gutting them and everything. And then the movie ends. Overall, great fucking movie. I would have never expected this film to be like that, just because of the fact that it was never released in theaters. And because of it being so good, they released it in film festivals, which was really cool. So if there was a film festival here for Halloween, there was this film festival here for Halloween, so they screened it there. That was the only way you could see it. And you got to remember, at this time in 2007, yeah, you had social media, but it wasn't as big as it is now, So they really bumped everything up just based on the word of mouth, People were talking about it. So, when I first heard of this film, I would always go on, what's that? Fucking any internet site. I would try to look up anything about it, see if they're going to do a movie release date and stuff. And, 2008 came around, because in 2007, that's when it was released. 2008 came around and they said, oh, we're going to release it in theaters. And then they backed off on it, and then they never did it. So with the fan outcry, they basically said, okay, fuck it, we're going to release it in time for Halloween of 2009. And as soon as they released it, I don't think they had a Blu-ray release of it, when it first came out, because Blu-ray was still, kind of new, kind of not. It had just won the war of the HD DVD thing. But I know that they had tons of it in DVDs. I got the first edition, and I was stoked with it, because I still watch the shit out of it. You pop in the DVD, it gives you the option if you want to do widescreen, full screen. It had all the animated, menus and stuff. It was really cool, But overall, it was a fun movie. And I think it became a cult favorite because it had so many things tied into it with Halloween that the normal average Joe will go through, right? How many of us know that there's that one kid who goes up to the fucking door and takes all the fucking candy out when, no one's home and they say, please take one. They take the whole fucking bowl. Am I right? There's that shit, right? I'm the only boy in my family. But I know my sisters and some of the language that they used in this film. My sisters had talked like that, like talking about dressing in skimpy clothes and shit like that. And, I understand that. That's why I was like, what? And there was other scenes, where the kids were brutal and they were fucking with the girl named Rhonda. And they made fun of her, called her names and everything for being odd. We all been there, Personally, me, I've always been an oddball. I was always that oddball kid like that, And still to this day, I'm a little bit of an oddball. But y'all fucking knew that, right? But, it had a lot of relatable stuff to it. And I still think that this is one of the greatest horror anthology films of all time. Because of the fact that, it's not... It was so good, you had copycats. You had Tales of Halloween that came out, recently, 2 years ago, right? Similar setup. But they basically separate it into like 4 different, 20-minute stories, right? Then you had other horror films trying to follow this trend, like Southbound, and they could never do it as good as Trick or Treat. Because Trick or Treat, what makes it stand out, it was all seamless in one story, It did it very Quentin Tarantino style, but it all tied in. And the whole movie basically let you in on the fact that it's one big-ass story and everybody's all connected. And that's what I loved about it, and that's what most of the fans, maybe even you horror fans out there like, right? Because I still enjoy the shit out of that, A lot of little interesting things, too, is that the creator of this, Michael Dougherty, he was the writer and he was the director. Obviously, he did Superman Returns. But, he's done some other films on the side. But the character of Sam, he actually originally made that character back in 1996, He did a animated short film to sell it, and, it's still up on YouTube, so if you type in, what it was originally called, it was originally called Season's Greeting, and basically it was an animated short film of a kid, and you don't know if it's a kid, but you know that it's, Sam, just judging from the way that he's dressed. He's going trick-or-treating at houses, knocking on doors, nobody's answering. He goes in an alleyway, somebody follows him, and then this guy beats the shit out of him. Then he comes back, beats the shit out of that guy, puts him in his sack, and he's dragging him out, And then they show his face, and then all of a sudden he closes his eyes and opens it up, and then boom, it ends up being a jack-o'-lantern, which is pretty cool. And he originally had done it, most of the work by himself, but he called it Season's Greeting. And it was kind of a wink to, I guess you could say, Nightmare Before Christmas. But, that was the original name they wanted to go with this, with Trick or Treat. But then a lot of people would think, fuck, it's another Christmas film. That's what I'm thinking right now. Like, damn, that sounds like too Christmassy, I don't know if that's even a fucking word, but, it sounds too Christmas to me, They thought about jack-o'-lantern. They thought about, not Halloween, something with Halloween in the title. But then they finally settled on Trick or Treat. And then they said, oh, shit, well, there's that 80s movie, or early movie, that's named Trick or Treat. So that's why they came up with the name of Trick or Treat, right? And it still becomes, this cult icon. Because now, here in 2018, Halloween Horror Nights, one of their main attractions is Trick or Treat. And this film was so good that people have been talking about it for a long time that they even announced that they want to do a sequel. Now, that's a different story, but I'll touch it on real quick because I know I'm already going past my 30-minute mark here, like I always do every week now recently, right? But anyways, the creator, Michael Dougherty, he said that he was going to do a sequel. He announced it. They showed the logo and everything. Yeah, we're going to release it soon. It got greenlit. At this point, because I think they announced that like 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, in 2014. It's going through production hell, unfortunately, because you had a couple big stars. You know, you had Anna Paquin, and then you also had Brian Cox. But, you know, now, at that time, they weren't as big, but now they're even bigger stars, because, you know, Anna Paquin was doing True Blood, and Brian Cox, he got his name out doing more TV shows and films and stuff like that. So, I don't know how they're going to play it out, but eventually there's still a second movie coming out for it, a sequel. And, you know, hopefully it's going to be as great as the first one. I don't know how you could top that. Personally, for me, I'd say a one and done is just good. Maybe do something different where it's Sam's tied in the background, and then you have another horror Halloween-ish story going in. But, you know, I'm just, I don't know. I'm dazed for words of how they would do the sequel. I really am, you know. But out of my opinion, and this is my opinion, it's basically, for me, one of the best horror anthologies. And hands down, anytime I think of Halloween, you know, especially right now, because, you know, I'm all hooked up and psyched about this fucking season. Obviously, you think of, you know, normal horror films like Halloween and some of the other ones that we all grew up with, but Trick or Treat now comes into mind because, you know, it's so relatable. And that's what makes it so fucking great, you know? But yeah, you know, I mean, let me know in the comments below what you guys think. If you enjoy Trick or Treat, if you're still waiting on that sequel to come out like I am, you know, can see how this one turns out, right? But anyways, thank you all for tuning in on the SaWGuy podcast and on this episode of, on the Trick or Treat. Woo! There's a mouthful right there, right? I'm very hyped up on this Halloween season. Hope you enjoyed this episode and the next 3 episodes that I got planned up in line. All Halloween theme oriented. So let's get on with this Halloween season and have some fun. Bring out all the creepiness. Right? But anyways, thank y'all for tuning in, and I'll catch y'all next time, as always.